What is going on, everyone? Welcome into Bayou Bengals football. So I was listening to Greg Penn was interviewed today. Garrett Nussmeier was interviewed today. Also, the punter, I believe, and Deuce Chestnut. So, yeah, they had some interesting things to say. Greg Penn, though, Greg Penn's an interesting guy for LSU this year. Greg Penn started all 14 games at linebacker this year, and he's a guy that's being a little bit forgotten about. You know, a lot of the talk is Omar Spates, Harold Perkins at linebacker, but Greg Penn is referred to by most of his teammates as one of the most improved players on this team. So I think that, to me, Greg Penn could be one of their key pieces as far as depth goes this year. So Harold Perkins are going to move around a little bit. And Omar Spates, can he play every snap? I think he can. But Greg Penn, he's a guy that shows enough ability that when he rotates in, he can really do some nice things. He's a guy that I think dropping some weight will help him a little bit. You see, he does struggle a little bit with lateral quickness, getting off of blocks a little bit. I think that extra quickness, that extra step that you get from being a little slimmer, I think will help him. But he is a talented linebacker. I like that he can burst and close on defenders. He will take on blocks fearlessly as far as when he's blitzing, taking on running backs. So, yeah, Greg Penn has got a good skill set. He was a guy that was a big-time recruit coming out of high school. He's a guy that touched on. He likes Omar Spates. He likes what Harold Perkins can do. He's happy. He was asked about Mason Smith as well. He's happy that Mason Smith is back this year. A guy like Mason Smith is truly a linebacker's best friend for a team. So it's really exciting that Mason Smith will be back this year. But, yeah, Greg Penn down to last fall it said he was about 242, 243. Now he's going to play at about 230. So I like listening to him interview. He's got a guy that's really, really fun to hear his answers. He's got charisma, seems like a confident guy. So to me, it's a guy that understands that a lot of the talk going to Omar Spates, Harold Perkins. This is a guy who I think is hungry to prove to people that he can still be a strong linebacker and really contribute to this football team, even though they have brought in guys like Omar Spates, like Ovia Gofu, transfers that are getting more attention. I think Greg Penn, with his teammates saying he's one of the most improved guys, I think there's something there. So when you keep hearing things about a guy, it's usually a really good sign. More people saying good things about a guy, the better. So excited to see how Greg Penn does this year. Greg Penn was one of those guys that I thought that you look at him and he has been a solid starter, starting all 14 games last year. But he's a guy that you see when you kind of look into the future, you can see that he has more potential that you want to see. I was watching the Alabama game, and he did struggle to get off of blocks at time, and I was thinking about how, this year you add Mason Smith back, so when Penn's playing, he's going to be kept clean a bit more. Now he's a little slimmer, faster. Said he's dedicated his time to nutrition. So to me, there's a lot of things working. That's just more things working in favor of this LSU defense being really good. So Mason Smith back, keeping the linebackers clean. Greg Penn a little faster this year. Adding Omar Spates, adding Harold Perkins. You're going to save a lot of yardage with Harold Perkins running guys down. Omar Spates going to do an excellent job at getting off a block. So you watch the Alabama game. I know it was Jahmyr Gibbs, but you see some of those plays where Alabama broke some big runs. It was just Penn. Some of the linebackers just didn't get off of blocks as quickly, and Alabama was getting more of a push on the defensive line without a presence like Mason Smith. And that's just one more added thing, added confidence of why I think LSU will be so improved, even more so this year defensively, just because a guy like Mason Smith, a guy like Mekhi Wingo, more experience, keeping guys clean. Jacoby Gilroy hopefully takes another step. The linebackers playing better. They're just going to save a lot more yardage getting off of blocks and being dominant up front at the line of scrimmage. So, yeah, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see how Greg Penn performs this year. But, yeah, it was really fun to hear him talk, and he was one of the guys they interviewed. So they interviewed Garrett Nussmeier this year. Nussmeier, a lot. There is some people in favor of Garrett Nussmeier over Jaden Daniels. I think that's really interesting. Nussmeier, really a talented quarterback too. You really saw his full ability in the Georgia game. I think I was listening to some of the other things he had to say. He was at the Manning Passing Academy. I like what he said about their quarterbacks coach. So their quarterbacks coach really pushes him. He really just does not want to be average. I think that's really cool that Nussmeier is a guy that's driven to want to be great. And to me, it sounds like him and Jayden Daniels have a good relationship, a good, healthy, competitive relationship. So I think that's really cool. And I think Nussmeier was one of the key guys in the running, or in the, rumored to transfer after this year. But I think this is a guy who trusts in Brian Kelly and this coaching staff so much, especially by the way he talked about the quarterbacks coach, that the guy that really trusts this team so much that he wants to stay, and when he gets his opportunity, he wants to shine, not just be average, but make the most of it and be a really good quarterback for this LSU football team. But yeah, Nussmeier, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe Jayden Daniels does get nicked up a little bit. Nussmeier does have to come in. You know what he's capable of if he does have to come in. And like Noah Kane talked about when he was interviewed, guys should be ready when they get when their name is called upon. With all the depth LSU has, you really have to. That's a statement a lot of players and coaches use nowadays. When your number gets called, you really have to be ready to make the most of your opportunity. You got to treat every day in practice like you're going to be the starter, and that's what a lot of great quarterbacks have, that mindset. I remember Caden Slovis a couple years ago for USC had that mindset. He came in, won USC a game, so I think that's really important to have that type of mindset. And Nussmeier seems to have that type of mentality, along with a lot of the other LSU players. I think that's a testament to how close these LSU players are. It sounds like they're a close team, and it sounds like there are a lot of unselfish players. Like you hear Gilroy yesterday, and he talked about how his goal is just to eat up double teams so he can keep guys like Omar Spates, Harold Perkins clean. I think or keep guys like Perkins. Or guys like Spates and Ogofu clean. I think that is awesome. Defensive tackles, I think I touched on this yesterday, some of the most unselfish players on a football field. So I think that's awesome that Jacoby and Gilroy was stating that stuff. But yeah, fun to listen to Garrett Nussmeier. He's a guy that sounds like he's just really dedicated to the sport of football. His dad was a coach, and he has aspirations to be a coach someday. So that's a little bit of what Garrett Nussmeier said. Obviously, he's a guy that Jayden Daniels likely going to be the guy for the entire season. But don't be surprised if we do see Nussmeier at some point this year. If Jayden Daniels gets banged up a little bit, I know he dealt with the ankle injury against Georgia, so things happen. Jayden Daniels gets banged up. Garrett Nussmeier fully capable of coming in and doing some nice things for this LSU football team. So they interviewed Deuce Chestnut. It was interesting. Chestnut originally wanted to come to LSU. He always thought LSU was DBU, so I think that was really cool that he always wanted to be an LSU Tiger. Said God had a different plan for him. Went to Syracuse, balled out at Syracuse, and a lot of players are talking about how quickly he can read plays, and that's something I really noticed. He recognizes screens so well. That was my scouting on Deuce Chestnut. That this guy, he recognizes plays so quickly that it makes him look faster and have more. It almost makes him look more athletic than he really is. Now, he is a good athlete, but I don't think he has like exceptional. I don't think he has like elite movement skills. But yeah, the ability to read plays makes him look faster out there. So I think that's probably why he's strung together several really good practice days, just because his ability to read plays and his experience is just such at a high level at this point that LSU is not, or their offense really is not expecting it. Does that mean he can't continue to make plays? But as great a days as he's had, that I feel like that's a little bit tough to sustain. It sounds like he's had days where he's had like 5 pass breakups. So Chestnut, I think it's rumored Chestnut is going to start at corner. I expect him to play well this season. I don't expect him to be like an elite feared corner, but I think he will certainly make some plays, and you hope he makes some big-time plays in several of their big-time games, including the Alabama game and and the Florida State game. You'd love to see Deuce Chestnut make a few plays in that football game. And like they touched on, his ability to read plays, hopefully you'll see a pick six in one of those games. He had a pick six. It was either last year in 2021 at Syracuse, and you know how much of a game changer pick sixes are. So you'd love to see one next year out of him. But yeah, so Nussmeier, Chestnut, Penn, some of the guys interviewed. I enjoy listening to some of the guys talk. It's really cool when they're asked to talk about their teammates, and it's kind of cool to see these guys' personalities. And I mean, it's just exciting. And I can't wait for the Florida State game. It's coming up. It's getting there. It'll be, it seems like a long time now, but it'll be here before we know it. And it's really, really exciting stuff. So yeah, Penn, Nussmeier, Chestnut. I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to talk about with these guys. But yeah, I think, the defensive line, every position group on this team is really interesting, but the defensive line, I'm thinking like Jalen Lee, Gilroy, if one of those guys, you hear those guys getting compliment in camp. If one of those guys can take another step in his game, I think that is so critical for this LSU team. Gilroy and Lee are kind of in the position Greg Penn's in. They're kind of maybe a little bit forgotten about guys, but they are talented players and guys that have a lot of passion, and it sounds like they are getting praise for their improvement. So even though Spates, Perkins probably going to be the guys at linebacker, Greg Penn's a guy that's going to be ready, and hopefully he will contribute and get some snaps for this team. And then Gilroy and Jalen Lee, Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith aren't going to play at every snap, but when Gilroy and Lee get subbed in, can they make an impact for this team? Same with Jordan Jefferson too. Those three guys, you feel like, your starters can't play every snap. I think LSU, and Brian Kelly stresses that winning starts from the inside. On defense, your defensive tackles, your defensive ends, to your linebackers. Your games are won in the trenches, especially in the interior. So, to me, big time improvement at defensive tackle, especially with Mason Smith back, Wingo, Jalen Lee, Gilroy, Jefferson. I would really challenge those three guys, Jefferson, Gilroy, and Jalen Lee. I would really challenge those guys if we want to do, and Greg Penn too, if we want to do something special and we need to win a championship, you got to have great, Brian Kelly stresses depth. So you guys are going to be our key depth guys. Penn, Jefferson, Lee, Gilroy. I would really challenge you guys to make the most of your snaps. Every time you get in, you have to play at a consistently high level every snap you get. You got to keep the linebackers clean. So, Mason Smith, Wingo, I think those guys have proven they can play at a high level consistently. Same with Spates and Harold Perkins. But Greg Penn, I guess that's the main point with Greg Penn is they need him to hopefully, now that he's in better shape, taking his nutrition better, hopefully the snaps he plays at a higher level and more consistent. So Greg Penn, interesting guy for this year. They're going to need him. They're going to need him to really play well and be a nice depth piece to Harold Perkins. You feel like if they move Harold Perkins to the outside, maybe they do bring Penn back inside. So you have Perkins rushing from the outside, and then you got Spates and Penn in the middle. I kind of like that. Spates and Penn in the middle, that'll be tough. And Mason Smith, Wingo. You feel like with those four guys in and Perkins off the edge, that'll create a unique threat to offenses. And that's what Brian Kelly touched on. Like, he was talking about how with Mason Smith back in the middle, if teams choose to double team him, that's going to leave a lot of one-on-one opportunities. And to me, Penn, he has solid ability to get off of blocks, but if he's kept clean, he has enough strength and physicality as a tackler that he could really thrive. So it's obviously would make any better playing clean, but I think Greg Penn's a guy that if he gets kept clean, that'll be especially important for him. So But yeah, we'll talk. Greg. So I've talked. Greg Brooks was interviewed yesterday, and thinking about what to expect from Greg Brooks Jr. this year at safety. So Greg Brooks, experienced guy playing at Arkansas and LSU, Vertigo. Recently was back at practice, I believe today. So yeah, Greg Brooks Jr., a guy who, to me, I listened to him talk, and to me, you get a sense that this guy is a true competitor and has a dedication to getting better. So I think that's key with Greg Brooks, a guy that does show the ability to make plays on the football, come down with interceptions. So to me, they need him. Brooks is not, I touched on it, he's not really an elite game changer necessarily, but he does have the ability to make plays. And I think that they need him to consistently play at a high level, him and Major Burns this year. Those are two guys that are going to be, Mason Smith, Perkins, Spates, going to be the key game changers, but they are going to be the ultimate complement to those game changers if they consistently play, if they consistently do their role down in and down out. That's how they'll help complement guys like Harold Perkins, Mason Smith, and Omar Spates. But yeah, I want to touch. So Ashton Stamps, I think, is just the coolest story. 3-star guy from Louisiana. I listened to an interview. It sounds like LSU was just his dream school. Sounds like he begged to get a scholarship to LSU. And you got to love a story like Ashton Stamps. This is a guy that just not many Power 5 offers. And like I was touching on, I was looking at some of the top guys in recruiting. You kind of go down the list, starting guys at the top like Zealand's Hurd, Womack. Those are their 5-star guys. So those are guys I initially watched. But I'm watching Ashton Stamps and I'm going, man, this guy's got a pretty good skill set. And then when you hear high praise of him in practice, I take a deeper dive on his tape and you go, wow, I really like his game. Quick backpedal, can make plays on the ball. They consistently asked him to play man-to-man coverage, and he did an excellent job in that regard. So, yeah, I think Ashton Stamps has a chance to be a really good player, and it sounds like he's fighting for a starting job this year. So, yeah. Stamps, really cool story that he's getting to go to a school that he wanted to go to at LSU, and yeah, I think Penn was saying how well he's done. So that's always fun to hear as a fan of a team. Which of the true freshmen are really surprising and doing really well. So to me, I thought it was going to be one of the wide receivers, but sounds like there's a chance that could still happen. I know it's still early, but Shelton Sampson Jr., a guy that showed a lot of his ability. But yeah, Ashton Stamps, one of the, I guess you could use the word surprises, and I think it's cool. He's bulked up, put an emphasis on improving his body. So yeah, Ashton Stamps, one of the standouts for the LSU team, and that is if there was one thing, like, to me, LSU going into this year, corner was a question before we entered fall camp. Corner was a question. I know they cleared that up with Zy Alexander, but who would have thought that 3-star Ashton Stamps, a guy that LSU didn't necessarily want at first, with no disrespect to him, he ends up being one of the headliners in camp. I think that's awesome. That's just what LSU needed. But I think, I'm going to say this. I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think Ashton Stamps has a chance to be a really good corner. I think he does have an NFL skill set, but yeah, we'll just see how the added weight, we'll see how much that helps him too. I don't think it necessarily needs to help him a lot. I think that, like I've touched on before, I think that will improve his physicality. But yeah, Stamps has a really bright future ahead of him at LSU, and I'm really excited to see how much he plays this year. So, but yeah, like people talked about, what if it's Chestnut, Zy Alexander, and Stamps at nickel? I like the way that sounds, and I think that is a really strong starting lineup with potentially high upside. Especially, it's a kind of a good combination of a really good athlete in Zy Alexander, a young guy who's got a bright future, and then an experienced guy in Chestnut who can play zone coverage and can read screens well and is that really good, sure tackler, tough, savvy, kind of the way Brian Kelly described him. So I really like that you got a good complement. And then Stamps can play Zy Alexander, really good man-to-man corner. So I like that you got a good complement of guys that one guy can excel in zone and read coverage and make tackles, and then Stamps and Zy Alexander, really good athletes, fast, can play man-to-man coverage. So I think if those three guys are the three stars, I think that's a really strong thing there. But yeah, the real question, I'm hearing reports Denver Harris is injured, so hopefully it's nothing serious and they get Denver Harris back. I really like Denver Harris's game. I think, will he start this year? I don't know. But I think he's a good player, and I think he's got a good skill set. He's a physical corner, a guy that does show the ability to cover man-to-man, not necessarily at a high level, but is a talented guy who certainly could help this football team. But yeah, to me, you gotta love a story like Ashton Stamps. I think that's awesome, and it's really exciting stuff. It's really cool. Like I've touched on yesterday, that Chris Hilton Jr. is taking another step in his development. Hilton, to me, when I watched his high school tape, I really thought that this guy had a chance to. If you look at his skill set based on his high school tape, you go, yeah, this guy really has a chance to be a good wide receiver for the LSU Tigers. And it looks like this year, kind of things are all coming together for him. So I think that's awesome, and we'll see. We'll see how much of an impact he makes. It should be a big one, based on what I'm hearing. He's got to clean up some of the drops. I'm not completely worried about it at this point, but it's one of those things that drops. If a guy has drops, if you see drops at some point, then that could happen in a big time moment, and you really don't want that to happen. So. And like I was listening to Nick Saban's press conference the other day. It's like, what is your goal? What is the goal of a wide receiver? To catch the ball. Like, you ideally should never drop a pass. Things happen, tight coverage, going against good corners, but some of those drops that Hilton had where he was just wide open, you really just cannot afford to have too many of those drops like that. So, expecting big things out of Chris Hilton Jr. This season. But yeah, I can't wait for Malik Nabers this year. If you look at, I love the way Malik Nabers has shot up the NFL draft consensus rankings. And, covering LSU, maybe I'm a little biased towards Malik Nabers, but I think he's a guy who, reminds me of Zay Flowers from this past year. Does have an NFL skill set as far as getting off the line of scrimmage, route running, in and out of breaks, ability to cut in, work back to the football. It's all the traits are there for Malik Nabers to be a high-end NFL receiver. And like I've touched on, I think this year he is really due for a breakout season. So yeah, I cannot wait to see how Malik Nabers performs. Hopefully LSU makes an emphasis to get this guy the ball early in the Florida State game. I think if I was LSU, I would try to establish the run early. We'll see which running backs really takes control of the game, but I would really make an emphasis to get Malik Nabers the ball and get Aaron Anderson the ball, because I think Aaron Anderson could be the X factor in the Florida State game, because Florida State, I'm sure they're scouting LSU pretty hard right now, and I don't think they might not be fully aware of what Aaron Anderson can do. But Aaron Anderson, another guy getting a lot of buzz in camp, a guy that, like Denbrock said, we're just going to have to get this guy the ball in his hands where his head's turned and he's able to turn up the field, run, make people miss. So yeah, Aaron Anderson, I think watch for him and Malik Nabers. I think those will be two key guys, and I think watch for LSU to try to establish the run game in this game. Watch for Connor Gilbreath when he's in at tight end as a blocker. So look for LSU to establish the run. I think Brian Kelly's a big believer in establishing the run on offense and stopping the run on defense. So look for those two things early in this game. Hopefully they get those things done. So, and then look what running back it is. You kind of get the feel like it's going to be I don't know. You kind of get the feel maybe it's a Noah Cain game. You feel like it might be a buckle up the chin strap type of physical game. So maybe it's going to be. So I would go out on a limb here and say it's going to be a Noah Cain day, and then look for them to get the ball to Aaron Anderson and Malik Nabers early on in this game. Look and see how many snaps Chris Hilton Jr. is playing. I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch in this game. And how does Mason Smith play? Bottom line, it's the guy that last year, I'm sure still has a sour taste in his mouth the way last year's game went, getting injured. So look the way he plays in this game. And he was in not only just against Florida State, but back in 2021, he's really unblockable one-on-one. So sure, he is going to be hungry to really make an impact in this football game. So yeah, there's a lot of key things to watch for. The line of scrimmage is going to be so fun. I mean, it's going to be similar to an NFL game, the battle at the line of scrimmage between Florida State and LSU. It should be a 4-quarter fight, kind of like last year about the line of scrimmage, but to me, I'm gonna say it right now that I'm gonna mark my words. I'm gonna put it out there right now that LSU is gonna win this game. I think there's just too many ways that LSU, like the way they lost against Florida State. Now they've improved those areas. Like Florida State made Jordan Travis made too many big plays. I think with Perkins, Spates, I think they're going to clear up a lot of Jordan Travis's ability to scramble. I think they're going to shut down Florida State's run game for the most part. Now Benson will probably have a couple of tough runs. He's a really good running back, but I think LSU they're going to slow down Travis, take away his ability to scramble. They're going to limit the Florida State's run game. I think that's going to put a lot of pressure on Florida State. I think that's how they get it done. But I think what'll be interesting matchup too is the LSU corners against the Florida State receivers. I think you'll see Florida State receivers make plays early in this game, but as the game goes on, I think LSU is going to win the line of scrimmage with their defensive line. So I think you'll see less and less plays from the wide receivers in Florida State as the game goes on. I think LSU limits Florida State's offense. I think Spates has a really good game. Maybe this is a game where he has like a high tackle total, like a 10, 11, 12 tackle game. I think we'll see I think Greg Penn will have some tackles too. Maybe Perkins should be hungry to make a play. He didn't play a lot of snaps last year. I think he made a play on kickoff last year for LSU. So yeah, a lot of fun matchups in this LSU Florida State game. And this is a game, I've touched on this before, this is a game that college football fans are craving, strong line of scrimmage play, NFL difference makers, people anxious to see how some of the transfers both teams got, like Florida State, Keon Coleman, who else? Jaheim Bell too. LSU, LSU Mason Smith returning from injury. Some of the transfers in the secondary, Zy Alexander for LSU, Spates. There's just a lot of anticipation for both teams in this football game. Even though a lot of things will be the similar. I guess what's really fun about this game, a lot of things will be similar from last year, but a lot of things will be different too. And even though this game could probably be a similar outcome, like a close game where I think LSU wins, I think there's a lot of things that I think there's a lot, there'll be different things that happen in this game. It'll be LSU probably wins a different way this season. I think it'll probably be one of those where maybe Florida State early on looks like they have the edge, but then LSU kind of slowly grinds them away with their so I think LSU was kind of a different team last year in week 1. To me, the first game reminds me of, I'm covering Michigan a lot. It reminds me of Jim Harbaugh's first game in Michigan didn't really look the way I think he envisioned it. The next year when a new coach takes over, the very first game kind of looks similar to the old coaching regime. I think that game looked a little similar to the Ed Orgeron coaching regime. To me, you saw LSU against Purdue is what LSU likely will look like. Or what is more of what Brian or LSU will look like under Brian Kelly. So I got to wrap with that. Thanks for tuning in to Bayou Bengals Football. Make sure to stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show. Till next time, peace.